Okay, I'd like to ask another set of questions and try to answer each one in 3 minutes. Okay, first question. How much protein do we need? For growing children, what should they eat to make sure they get enough protein? Is there a way that we could not get enough protein? Are you positive that kids and adults don't need animal products to get enough protein? It's a funny thing. I am definitely brainwashed. In other words, I'm 100% plant-based, and I'm still every now and then, if someone says it loud enough, I think, I don't know, that's what I was told when I was little. And it's been answered 100 times, but it still sometimes seems like something I'm not confident in. Number 2, do you recommend cholesterol-lowering drugs in any cases? Why or why not? Question 3, how does human anatomy compare with those animals that are designed to eat other animals, like a lion, versus those that are designed to eat plants, like an elephant? Question 4, Thomas Seyfried, professor at Boston College, spoke last year at the Real Truth About Health conference. He said that glucose and glutamine were the foods of cancer. So does that mean we should avoid all glucose? And how would we even avoid glutamine if we wanted to? Question 5. A lot of what you're saying about weight loss, about obesity, diabetes, heart disease seems to make sense. But what about dementia? Will lifestyle prevent Alzheimer's the way it prevents heart disease? And question 6 is, what is candida? And how do you get rid of it? So the questions again, the first one was getting enough protein. The second was cholesterol-lowering drugs. The third was, how does human anatomy compare with those animals that are designed to eat other animals? Fourth was Thomas Seyfried saying the foods of cancer are glucose and glutamine. Question 5 was, how do you prevent dementia? And question 6 is, what is candida and how do you get rid of it?
I'll go first and I'll talk about Dr. Seyfried's lecture and his work. And I have written a lot about this. I invited Dr. Seyfried to speak for the first time at one of our conferences about, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, and Dr. Campbell was the speaker also. And as soon as I announced it, I get a lot of hate mail and nasty comments, and some of it's amusing, some of it not so much, but people were like, I can't believe you invited Dr. Seyfried to come and speak with Dr. Campbell, and how can you put these two people together, and they're diametrically opposed and they don't have the same ideas, and are you going to become a paleo person? I mean, it was just absolutely insane. Like, I got close to 1,000 emails like this. Well, the first thing that I'll tell you is that the Saturday night of our conference, Dr. Seyfried and Dr. Campbell were in my hospitality suite till 2:30 in the morning talking. It's one of the most interesting conversations I've ever heard. They're not as diametrically opposed as you might imagine. And I went home that night and I thought, if I die in my sleep tonight, this is the way I'd like to spend the last few hours of my life. It's very interesting. But Dr. Seyfried's work is based on Otto Warburg's research in the 1940s. He was a Jewish researcher in Germany. And the reason why he didn't end up in the camps is because Hitler had a polyp on his vocal cord, and he thought he might need some cancer researchers sometime, so he never sent the Jewish cancer researchers, some of them, to the camps. So anyway, he toiled away in Nazi Germany and made a discovery that all cancer cells were the same regardless of where they were located in the body, and that they all took up glucose at a more rapid rate. They didn't respire normally. So speed ahead, and a guy by the name of Peterson picked up Warburg's work at Hopkins, and then Seyfried picked it up, and he wrote a very interesting textbook called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. And one of the things that he talks about in the book is the potential for managing cancer, some types of cancer, the way that you manage type 1 diabetes. You die with it, not of it. Handled properly, you could live till the end of your life. And he's focused on people who have forms of cancer that people don't have long enough to live to use alternative approaches or integrative approaches or just diet to try to resolve. So if you have slow developing chronic lymphocytic leukemia, you can often eat your way out of it. We have a lot of people who have. But if you have glioblastoma, you're likely to be dead in 8 months, and there's just not enough time to do much, and the treatments don't work. You're going to be dead in 8 months whether you get the treatments or not. And he's been successful in using a ketogenic diet with some of these people who have literally death sentences. And one of his patients, he reported on a case report when he was in Columbus, about a patient who lived for 7.5 years after her diagnosis of glioblastoma, that just doesn't happen. He's got quite a few like that now. And he set up an institute to work with doctors who want to learn how to do this. So I think the point is that we have to make sure that we're looking at the application of diet to cancer without such a one-size-fits-all lens. I talked about that last night. I think it's important that we not do what medicine has done, which is try to slot everybody into this. If you have this, this is what we do for all cancer patients. This is what we do for all heart patients. So when I'm dealing with somebody who has terminal cancer, like treatments don't work, you don't have very long to live, I think that Seyfried's approach is a reasonable approach. When you've got somebody who has stage 2 breast cancer, I think that would be insane, okay? So I think that there's a lot more I could say about it, and I could probably talk to you for 3 or 4 hours, but Steve would have tranquilizer darts to keep that from happening. So we'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of legitimacy to using certain strategies that deprive cancer cells of glucose for very long periods of time, and that is not diametrically opposed to the way that we would approach a person with cancer that is far less aggressive at a much earlier stage, and et cetera.
I totally agree with your approach, and we have to look at different things, but I think Seyfried has 2 patients that have been successful, no more than 2. I think he's got an N of 2, which to me is not science. I attended you guys have seen me do this before. I attended a lecture of his where I just was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Because it was such speculation and anecdote on 2 people. Most of it was rat studies. It's based on this idea that cancer cells, first of all, you can't extrapolate treatment of cancer to prevention of cancer. Those are 2 different things.
Right.
Secondly, he's done nothing to prove the effectiveness of his treatment except provide 2 anecdotal reports. So what I see a lot of times in researchers, I think we all see it, is where they lose the forest for the trees. Definitely cancer cells depend on cancer. He may be right, but I'd like to see a little bit more evidence before it's taken by the vast public to say, oh my God, sugar is the cause of cancer, because that's not true.
Well, I have to respond to that, okay?
Yeah.
I've listened to his lectures for a long time. He was at our conference last year also. And he spent about 90 seconds of the 2 hours he talked on those 2 patients. So there's a lot more to this than that. Yeah. His textbook is 400 pages with 3,000 references, and I think that before we get into the weeds about it, people should read that book, all right? It's tough to read. It's really technical.
It's very in the weeds,
It is in the weeds, but the point that he's making, I think that we have to step back and look at the point that he's making. He actually talks about plant-based diets in that book.
He did, and in the conference I went to, I started asking these things, because I said, well, come on, IGF-1 stimulates cancer. Yeah, oh, yes, it definitely does. Right. But you're telling people to eat meat. No, I'm not telling people to eat meat.
He's not.
Yeah,
no,
I think it gets lost in the message, though.
But the other thing, too, is that in the United States, he is working on doing a study, but in the United States, an IRB is never going to approve a study that randomizes glioblastoma patients to a keto diet versus radiation, which will kill them. So everybody who's making interesting discoveries, we have Dr. Koh coming to our conference this fall. She's another one who's been ostracized by the cancer community. If you have an interesting idea about cancer that has some promise, you're never going to get a chance to try it in this country. So the only thing that you can do, look at what Esselstyn did. He never could have gotten his study approved either. So he basically said, listen, if you show up and say you want me to help you with diet and cardiovascular disease, I'd like to be able to use your data. Okay with you? All right, great. So we don't have to randomize. And of course, he gets beat up all the time because there's no control group either. Well, the control group is what happens to people who don't do this. And in the case of glioblastoma, they're all dead. If anybody lives, it's an anomaly, right? So what he's basically doing is training doctors around the world to do this, where there's a lot more freedom to practice differently, and also making the information available, hoping that enough people on their own might do it, and then submit their case reports to join the others. And that's the only way he'll ever be able to prove it. But the basic premise of what Seyfried is talking about is that all cancer cells are the same. They respire abnormally, and if you treat that, and there are different ways of treating it, including fasting, He talks about fasting.
I mean, fasting for sure.
Intermittent fasting to potentiate chemotherapy. We've used that with a lot of people with great results. A keto diet for somebody who's 8 months from death. Various ways to address the metabolic abnormality of cancer cells. So I agree with you that there are limitations to his work, but they're not self-imposed.
I just want people to understand that there's a difference between hypothesis and theory. Those are two different things.
Well, I understand that,
Hypothesis
but
is
if you're the
anecdote,
person with glioblastoma, you don't really care much about that. You're just looking for something that might help you, because nobody in oncology's got any ideas for you at this point.
Yeah, but the problem I have with Seyfried is not that. It's not the glioblastoma patient. It's the extrapolation of his work to this whole support of ketosis diet and some kind of idea that ketosis prevents cancer, which it does not
doesn't.
do. Yeah, and so that's what really bothers me. And besides, if you really want to look at evidence-based research for a nutrient fueling cancer, there's much more evidence for methionine fueling cancer than there is sugar. Very good studies, prospective, randomized trials in conjunction with chemotherapy, but very strong evidence that methionine, which is very heavy in animal products.
Right, and remember that the keto people are grasping for anything that they can,
Anything,
including the
right.
misinterpretation of
Including
other
the
people's work.
misinterpretation,
All right,
right.
they misinterpret Campbell's work.
Right. We could talk about it and say, oh yeah, this is interesting. They misinterpret that and take it as ketosis prevents cancer.
Right.
That's fun. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's been a long time since I watched Saturday Night Live and that kind of back and forth on the news. Jane Curtin and such.